Hey everybody, welcome here to Musicians Edition. I'm Evan on the guitar, and in this video we're going to be diving into some skills that are going to help us pull off some nice riffs and solos on the guitar. So I pulled out my electric to show some of these off. We're going to go ahead and look at hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides on the guitar. So we can get those down and make our riffs and our solos sound exactly like how we're hearing them by our favorite guitarists. All right, so all these are pretty cool. Some of these even give us easier ways to play some stuff versus how we might have been playing it otherwise. Once you get these down, they're really cool. So we're going to look at hammer-ons first. We're going to look at how you're going to read these as well as how to play these. So for tabs for these, you might see it written out on a more formal digital tab. We'll look at them that way, and we'll also look at them in more of the like informal text type of tabs because you might be seeing it written in either way. So we're going to go ahead and look at hammer-ons first. So in the more digital kind of formal tab, you're going to see them connected by legato, kind of a slur. You know, if you're familiar with like piano or other instruments, that's kind of how that's written out. So you've got this curved line above connecting these two, and that's showing you that it's a hammer-on. I've sometimes seen it with that plus an H above it as a way to show that hammer-on. And then as far as the text-based tabs, those ones usually just put the two numbers with an H in the middle for the two frets you're going to be hammering on in between. And that's for how to read it. As far as what hammer-ons are, let's go ahead and show you. You're going to be playing one note, or it actually could be multiple notes, but we're going to practice with just one note. And while that's ringing out, I'm going to use a finger to press a higher note, like this. So then it actually becomes that higher note, but I'm not picking twice, I'm only picking once. And I'm still getting that higher note coming through because I've got the sound ringing out there, and then all I do is just put my finger on the higher note that I want to change it to. So usually done a bit quicker. There's your hammer-on. That's a hammer-on moving from the 5th fret to the 7th fret. These hammer-ons are typically just going to be like how far your fingers can reach above, which is usually just going to be hammering on up one note, two notes, or sometimes three notes. So those are the kind of hammer-ons you are going to want to practice on the different strings at different frets, moving up by 1, 2, or 3 at a time. That is our hammer-on. So for these ones that we see here written down, our first one is on the 2nd string from the bottom here, from a 3 to a 6. So we would play that 3, and then move on up and hold that 6 with our pinky. So that's 3 to 6. 4 to 5 on the 3rd string we can do as well, another hammer-on. You can see that second one written out there. And then top string from a 5 to an 8. There's that one. All right, so those are our hammer-ons. We'll go ahead and practice them a bit later on. But again, used a lot in riffs and solos. These ones are maybe the most frequent out of these ones we're going to talk about. And the opposite of these is going to be a pull-off. So a hammer-on is we hold and we go higher. A pull-off is we play and then we go lower. So we're kind of reversing this around. So for a pull-off, I'm not going to use my index finger for the initial note because I need those kind of fingers to go down lower. So I need to use ring, middle, or pinky for that first note. And then I'm going to pull off of it to go to that one lower. So again, I'm only strumming once on that first note. And then I'm just lifting up and leaving it to play on that next fret I had held down. So pull-offs, you'll see them written the same way on the more formal tabs. Just the tie, the curved tie connecting the two. The only difference is you're going from a higher to a lower number for the pull-offs versus lower to higher for the hammer-on. So the symbol doesn't look any different. It's just you're paying attention to, am I going higher or lower for hammer-on or pull-off? So for this first one here, we see written on this formal tab, that's a 7 to a 5. So I'm going to go 3rd string from the bottom, 7th fret with my ring finger, have the index ready. And there it is. Moving up a string, 8 to 5 for the next one. And that can be pinky or your ring finger for the first one. ending up on that index finger on the 5. One more string higher, 8 to 5 again. And there it is. There's our pull-offs. Written on the more text type of tabs, it's usually just a P. So easy to remember. Pull-off written as a P in those. Hammer-on written as an H in those, usually lowercase, but sometimes you'll see it uppercase too. And again, for the more formal digital tabs, you'll have just the line connecting the two numbers, and you're just looking, am I going up or am I going down for hammer-on versus pull-off. So that's those two, and hammer-ons are the more common of these two. They're also the easier ones to play. Pull-offs, for some reason, are a little bit harder to play, but we'll go ahead and look at some exercises to practice those in just a bit. For now, let's look at our last one, which is going to be slides.
This lesson is brought to you by the Musician's Edition practice book. Make goals and keep track of progress throughout the whole year. When you're done with this video lesson, don't forget to mark this practice time in your Musician's Edition practice book. Now back to the video.
So slides is our last way that we're going to talk about today of how to change the pitch without actually strumming more than once on your guitar. So for slides, we are only going to stick with one finger. We're not going to involve any others because we just need to slide it up or down. So we're not doing a abrupt change like the hammer-on. We're going to slide that change. So it's more gradual, and you know the speed of how fast you're going to go determines how gradual that change is. So that's a slow one versus a faster one. That's that slide. So all we do is we are going to have one of our fingers pressed, whichever one we're playing with, and it can be any one. We are going to strum it, and then we decide, are we sliding up or are we sliding down? There it is again. So that is our slide. Pretty easy to get down. You just want to have a nice, consistent pace to it. It can be slower or faster depending on how it's being played in the song or how you want to use it, but having a consistent pace through your slide is definitely what you want. You don't want to be more jagged, so having a nice, even kind of spacing as you go up or down. This one is written on that more formal tab with kind of like an upward or downward slash, depending on are you sliding up or are you sliding down. For the more text-based tabs, it's usually a slash. That's going to show you the up slide or backslash for the down slide. Same kind of an idea. And so that's going to be the two ways you might see it written, just with those slashes. So for the one on this more formal sheet, we have a 5 sliding to a 7 on the 3rd string from the bottom. So let's find our 5th fret, one finger, slide it up to 7. And the next one, slide it back down. You do want to make sure as you're sliding, just like how you do fret towards the upper end of the fret against our little bar there. When you do your slide, you want to end up still at that same kind of a spot, not in the middle or not in the back end. Especially when you slide like down, your finger might have a tendency to drag further down the fret. So make sure you do keep it hugged up against right there still to get to that 5th fret there. All right, and what we are going to see is riffs and solos, obviously, put some of these things together. So we're going to go ahead and look at one solo that is probably one of the first solos I ever learned that practices some hammer-ons and slides for us. It's nice and slow and I think pretty easy to get the idea of. Before we go into that, let's just look at some ways we can practice this other than playing songs. So obviously being able to play songs we hear is the goal for all of this, but not all songs are going to have exactly what we need to practice. So there are drills that if you really do want to get this down that I do recommend. And so for our hammer-ons, a couple ways you can do this, and that's first of all just picking a fret, and you're going to go ahead and hammer on 1 up, 2 up, and then 3 up, and you can move across the strings down this way as you do it each time. Go up. And getting more comfortable with your fingers there. So not just on that fret, but move it all around. Practice this on a wide variety of frets so you can practice with the different spacing. Since the spacing of the frets gets tighter as you get higher up, it's good to practice up here as well as further down at the bottom so you are prepared for anything. Because again, hammer-ons usually going up 1, 2, or 3 notes. That's typically enough for us to practice there. We can also practice scales by moving up the scale, hammering on along the way up. So this does require you know your intervals and the notes in a scale. If I did the C major scale, for example, I can find C here on the 3rd fret of the A string. So I'm going to go ahead and play the first one and then hammer on to the next note all the way up. And that's the C major scale played with hammer-ons, and we can always reverse it. And now let's do our pull-offs. All right, and that's good practice again to know your intervals and know scales if that's something you're not already familiar with, as well as practicing moving across the strings this way as opposed to just moving up and down the strings like we did in that first exercise. So we can pick a note, practice the scale, and that scale gets you practice moving up 2 or up 1. What you can also do is when you have a jump of 1, you can practice going to the jump of 3, because that would be the note after that one anyway. So for example, this is E. I need to play F and G. So from E, I can hammer on to F and to G. Since that's